The stable fire had taken everything, William Dunton, age 7, and any softness left in his father's heart. That was 11 months ago. And now Phantom, the boy's beloved black stallion, was about to add an 8th victim to his count. Monica Jefferson stood motionless in the shadow of the barn entrance, watching Duke Carl Dunton approach the paddock with the rigid posture of a man who'd forgotten what it meant to bend. Phantom's muscles coiled tight beneath his coat. His breath came in sharp bursts through dilated nostrils, each exhale a promise of violence that Monica understood in her bones. She had no business being here. Her Uncle Thomas had made that brutally clear this morning. "Keep your nose out of the Duke's affairs, girl. Silent little thing like you's got nothing to offer anyway." But Monica wasn't offering. She was witnessing, reading the tremor in Phantom's hindquarters, the whites around his eyes, the way his weight shifted backward, preparing to strike. Her father had taught her this language before the accident stole her voice, before 3 years of wordless existence taught her that some truths don't need sound to be heard. The Duke wasn't trying to train his son's horse. He was trying to resurrect his son. "Steady now," Carl murmured, one hand extended, palm up. "It's just me. Just us." Phantom's scream shattered the morning quiet, wild and wounded and utterly accusatory. The stallion launched upward, hooves carving deadly arcs through empty air. Carl jerked backward, his footing failed, and he dropped hard against the paddock rail. Monica's body moved before her mind caught up. She was over the fence in one fluid motion, her skirts tangling around her boots as she landed between 1,500 pounds of grief-mad horse and the fallen Duke. Phantom's hooves descended, aimed directly at Carl's chest. Monica didn't flinch, didn't breathe, didn't close her eyes against what was coming. She simply stood there, utterly still, and began to hum. Not a melody. Her ruined throat couldn't shape anything so complex. Just a low, rhythmic vibration that matched the pattern of her own heartbeat. The sound her mother had made in the carriage, right before the world splintered into silence and blood and loss. Phantom's hooves stopped inches from impact. His massive head swung toward Monica, ears swiveling forward in confusion. She kept humming, kept breathing, her eyes locked on his, dark and wild, and drowning in something that looked exactly like the feeling Monica carried in her chest every single day. The stallion's nostrils flared, testing her scent. Monica raised one hand slowly, palm open, fingers relaxed. An offering, not a demand. Behind her, she heard Carl scramble to his feet, but she didn't turn. Every particle of her attention remained fixed on the animal, trembling 3 feet away. "I know," she thought, willing him to understand. "I know what it's like when the pain has nowhere to go." Phantom's breath warmed her outstretched hand. He didn't lower his head to investigate. Not yet. But he didn't retreat either. "What in God's name?" Carl's voice cracked like a whip. Phantom flinched. Monica's hand shot up in a sharp gesture that demanded silence. To her shock, the Duke obeyed. She waited until Phantom's breathing slowed, until the violent tremor in his muscles eased into ordinary tension. Only then did she turn around. Carl Dunton stood 10 feet away, expensive riding coat streaked with dirt, dark hair falling across his forehead. His eyes were grey and hard and desperately, achingly lost. "You could have been killed," he said flatly. Monica pulled the small writing slate from her apron pocket. Her hand shook slightly as she wrote, "So could you." "That's different," she wrote again. "Because you're a duke? Because he's my responsibility." Carl's jaw tightened. And he's been my failure for 11 months. Monica looked back at Phantom, who stood watching them both with wary intelligence. Then she wrote what she'd known the moment she'd seen the horse's eyes. He's not broken. He's trapped. Give me 3 weeks. But Carl stared at the slate for a long moment. 3 weeks to do what 7 trainers couldn't? Monica nodded once. And if you fail? She wrote the truth. Then we'll both know some cages have no keys. Something shifted in Carl's face. Recognition, perhaps, or the desperate hope of a drowning man offered driftwood. 3 weeks, he said quietly. Starting tomorrow. Monica tucked the slate away and walked toward the paddock fence, her legs steadier than they had any right to be. Behind her, Phantom didn't scream. Monica arrived at dawn, before the stable hands began their rounds. Phantom stood in the far corner of his paddock, muscles taut, watching her approach with the focused intensity of a predator tracking prey. She didn't speak, didn't try to coax or command. She simply sat down in the dirt 15 feet from where he stood and began to breathe. In, out. Slow and steady. Her hands rested loose in her lap, her posture open but not vulnerable. Waiting without expectation was an art she'd perfected in the 3 years since the accident. Monica, sweetheart, watch the turn. The memory surfaced sharp and immediate. Her mother's voice. The sudden lurch as the wheel caught. Rain slicking the reins through Monica's inexperienced fingers. The world tilting, splintering, her mother's scream cut short by impact, and then silence. Monica pulled herself back to the present. Phantom had taken 2 steps closer. His ears swiveled toward her, tracking the rhythm of her breathing. She let the minutes stretch. When she finally stood, it was slowly, telegraphing every movement. She walked a wide arc around him, but never approaching directly, never meeting his eyes with challenge. Just existing in his space, proving she could be trusted not to force anything he wasn't ready to give. What exactly is she doing? Monica's Uncle Thomas stood at the paddock fence, his face twisted with familiar contempt. Carl stood beside him, though his expression was harder to read. Working, Carl said shortly. Working. Thomas spat the word. She's sitting in the dirt like a simpleton. Your Grace, I know you're desperate, but my niece is damaged. Has been since the accident. Can't speak, can barely function in polite society. You'd do better with a real trainer. Monica felt the words land like stones, each one familiar, each one carefully aimed to remind her of her place. She kept her attention on Phantom, who'd frozen at the sound of raised voices. But Carl's voice came low and cold. Your niece calmed an animal in 30 seconds that hospitalized 7 men. I suggest you leave her to her methods. But Your Grace, leave now! Monica heard Thomas retreat, muttering about ungrateful girls and foolish nobility. She didn't watch him go. She was too focused on Phantom, who'd moved 3 steps closer while the men argued. Close enough now that she could see the scars beneath his coat. Close enough to recognize that he was reading her as carefully as she read him. 2 creatures fluent in the language of damage, finally finding someone who understood. By the end of the first week, Phantom allowed Monica's hand on his neck, just her palm against his coat, feeling the rapid thunder of his pulse gradually slow beneath her touch. She hummed that wordless rhythm while her fingers traced the old scars hidden in his mane. Evidence of panic, of violence turned inward when there was nowhere else for it to go. Carl appeared in the stable doorway, just as twilight bled into full dark. Monica had stopped leaving when the sun set. The night sessions revealed more. Phantom's defenses lowered in darkness, his breathing easier when he didn't have to perform strength for an audience. May I? Carl asked, gesturing to the empty stall beside Phantom's. Monica nodded, her hand never leaving the horse's shoulder. Carl settled against the wall, his fine coat abandoned somewhere, shirt sleeves rolled to his elbows. He watched them in silence for a long moment before speaking. William loved him absolutely. His voice carried no inflection, just stating fact. Arthur begged for a horse of his own for 2 years. I finally gave in on his 6th birthday. Carl's jaw tightened. I was in London when the fire started. Estate business. Always estate business. By the time I received word and returned, my son was... He stopped. Started again. Phantom tried to go back into the burning stable. Took 4 men to restrain him. He's carried the guilt ever since. Monica pulled her slate from her pocket, wrote carefully. Guilt is the heaviest cage. Yes. Carl's grey eyes found hers across the dim space. I imagine you understand something about that. Her hand stilled on Phantom's neck. She wrote, I was driving when the carriage overturned. My mother died because I couldn't hold the reins. You were how old? 17. Christ. Carl stood, moved closer. Monica, you were a child in a storm. That's not... She shook her head sharply, cutting him off. Some truths couldn't be argued away. Some cages were built from choices that could never be unmade. Carl reached past her to run his own hand along Phantom's shoulder. His fingers brushed hers, warm and solid and deliberate. Neither of them pulled away. He trusts you, Carl said quietly. In 8 days, you've done what I couldn't manage in 11 months. Monica wrote, because I'm not trying to fix him. I'm just proving he's not alone. Carl's fingers tightened over hers. Neither are you. The words hung between them, dangerous and impossibly gentle. Phantom's breathing had evened into something close to peace, and Monica realized with sudden, terrifying clarity that she was no longer just healing a horse. She was learning what it felt like to be seen. The smoke drifted across the paddock just after noon. Nothing dangerous, just brush burning in a field 2 miles distant. But Phantom smelled it, and everything Monica had built in 12 days shattered like glass. He screamed. Not the defiant challenge from their first meeting, but something worse, pure animal terror. His body went rigid, eyes rolling white, and then he was moving, violent and blind, his hooves striking out at threats only he could see. Monica was standing too close. She knew it the instant his shoulder slammed into her. Knew she should run, should vault the fence, should do anything except what her body chose to do. She went still. Phantom's hoof caught her ribs. The impact drove the air from her lungs, sent her sprawling into the dirt. Pain bloomed sharp and immediate across her left side. The stallion reared above her, her hooves cutting arcs through smoke-hazed air, and Monica didn't move. Didn't try to crawl away or protect herself. She just looked up at him and hummed. The same rhythm, the same wordless sound she'd offered from the beginning. I know what you're seeing. I know it won't stop. Phantom's hooves came down 6 inches from her head. Monica! Carl's voice, raw with terror. Don't move! I'll get the rifle! She managed to shake her head once before the world tilted sideways. Phantom stood over her, trembling, his breath coming in great, heaving gasps. The smoke was already dissipating, but he couldn't see that. He was somewhere else, somewhere burning, watching everything he loved turn to ash. Monica reached up slowly, ignoring the fire in her ribs, and touched his leg. Carl hauled her bodily from beneath the horse, his hands shaking with fury or fear, or both. The physician arrived within the hour. 3 cracked ribs, heavy bruising. instructions for bed rest that Monica knew she wouldn't follow. You could have died. Carl stood rigid at the window while the physician wrapped her torso. He could have killed you. Monica's slate sat on the bedside table. She wrote with careful, painful movements. He wasn't trying to hurt me. He was trying to tell me what happened. He was trying to speak. Carl read it, his jaw working. By crushing you. By showing me what he saw. What he couldn't save. What he's been trapped inside for 11 months. Monica. He needs to remember. Not forget. Remember and survive it. The physician left. Monica closed her eyes against the pain and exhaustion, her breathing shallow. She heard Carl pull a chair close. Ma felt him take her hand. I can't watch you die for him, he said quietly. I can't lose someone else. He stopped, started again. I'm falling in love with you. God help me. I know I shouldn't. I know it's impossible. But watching him nearly kill you today, I realized I'd rather lose the horse than lose you. Monica kept her eyes closed, kept her breathing even, let him believe she was unconscious, because hearing the truth was terrifying enough. Admitting she felt the same would be impossible. Monica's ribs ached with every breath, but she ignored the physician's orders and returned to the paddock on the 18th day. Rain had been threatening since dawn, the air thick and electric with coming storm. Phantom met her at the fence line, a small miracle. She led him slowly across the estate grounds, her hand light on the lead rope. Carl walked beside them, silent, his presence both comfort and complication. They'd barely spoken since his confession 4 days ago, the words he'd thought she couldn't hear, still burning between them like a brand. The old stable ruins appeared through the rain-heavy mist. Phantom's steps faltered. His entire body went tense, but he didn't bolt, didn't scream. He just stood there, trembling, staring at the blackened timbers that marked where everything had burned. The first drops fell as Monica moved closer to the stallion, her hand on his neck, humming that steady rhythm. Carl stood utterly still, watching his son's horse finally face the place where William had died. Thunder cracked overhead. The rain came harder, soaking through Monica's dress, plastering her hair to her face. Phantom lowered his head, a long or shuddering breath escaping him. Not peace, but acknowledgement. The trauma witnessed, carried, survived. Monica turned to look at Carl and found him already watching her. Rain streamed down his face, his eyes bright with something that might have been grief or wonder or desperate, fragile hope. He closed the distance between them in 2 strides. His hands came up to frame her face, gentle despite the intensity burning in his gaze. Tell me to stop, he said hoarsely. Monica rose on her toes and kissed him instead. The world narrowed to sensation, rain and warmth and the taste of him, his hands in her wet hair, her fingers clutching his soaked shirt. Everything she'd been holding back for 18 days, for 3 years, for her entire careful, quiet life poured into that kiss. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Carl's expression shifted to horror. God, Monica, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. You work for me. You're injured. I took advantage. She pulled out her slate, hands shaking as she wrote, Don't apologize for seeing me. You're the first person in 3 years who's looked at me and seen a whole person instead of a broken thing. Carl read it, his thumb tracing her rain-wet cheek. You were never broken. But Monica knew better. She'd spent 3 years silent and small and safe. Loving a duke would destroy all of that. Thomas found them in the stable on the 20th day, Carl's hand tangled in Monica's hair, her fingers pressed against his chest. The kiss broke apart at the sound of her uncle's sharp intake of breath. "Your Grace." Thomas's voice dripped with false deference. "I apologize for my niece. She's been nothing but trouble since the accident left her. Well, damaged. I assure you, whatever she's implied she can offer, a mute girl has no business." "Get out!" Carl's voice went cold and deadly. "Your niece is worth 10 of the sycophants who grovel at my door. She's accomplished more in 3 weeks than you have in your entire worthless life." Monica touched Carl's arm, shaking her head, but he was already moving forward. "If I hear you speak about her like that again, I'll have you barred from this estate permanently. She's not damaged. She's extraordinary, and she deserves better than a bitter old man who treats her like a burden." Thomas fled, but not before his eyes promised retribution. The aristocrats arrived 2 days later for the scheduled demonstration. Monica led Phantom through his paces, gentle, responsive, transformed. The gathered nobility applauded politely. "Remarkable," Lady Hartwick said, loud enough to carry. "Like a savant with animals. Such a pity about her voice. Can't imagine what use she'd be in proper society." "None whatsoever," another woman agreed, "though I suppose she's adequate for stable work." Carl's mother, the Dowager Duchess, arrived that evening. Monica watched from the hayloft as she cornered her son in the courtyard below. "Tell me the rumors aren't true. Tell me you haven't formed an attachment to that silent girl. Her name is Monica. I don't care if her name is Helen of Troy. She's a mute stable hand, Carl. The scandal alone would be devastating. Your father would be appalled. My father married for duty and was miserable his entire life. And you're a duke. Well, duty is all you have." Monica pressed her hand against her mouth, the words cutting deeper than Phantom's hooves ever had. She'd known this was coming, known that being seen, being loved, being visible would cost more than she could afford to pay. The 3-week contract ended tomorrow. She would finish it, collect her wages, and disappear before she destroyed everything Carl had worked to rebuild. That was what love looked like, wasn't it? Letting go before you became someone's ruin. Monica packed her few belongings in the pre-dawn darkness of day 21. Her small canvas bag held everything she owned: 2 dresses, her mother's handkerchief, the wages Carl had already paid her. Enough to start somewhere new. Somewhere she wouldn't watch a duke destroy himself for loving someone unsuitable. She was halfway across the estate grounds when Carl's voice stopped her. "Where are you going?" Monica turned slowly. He stood in the stable doorway, still dressed from the night before, his expression carved from stone and desperation. She pulled out her slate. "The contract is complete. Phantom is healed. I'm going home." "Like hell you are." Carl crossed the distance between them in long strides. "You're running. Why?" Her hand trembled as she wrote, "Because I'm not enough. Because silence isn't enough. Because you deserve someone who can speak for you, speak to your children, speak for themselves in a world that already judges you. I don't need you to speak. I need you to stay." Monica's throat constricted. She wrote faster, more desperately. "You don't understand. Well, then make me understand." The truth clawed its way up from where she'd buried it 3 years ago. She wrote, erased, wrote again. Her hand was shaking so badly the words barely formed. "I'm not leaving because I'm mute. I'm leaving because healing Phantom showed me something I can't unsee." Carl waited, his eyes never leaving her face. "My silence isn't damage. It's punishment. It's the cage I built myself because I couldn't accept my mother's forgiveness, because I was driving and she died, and her last words were, "It wasn't your fault." And I couldn't. I can't. She stopped, started again. I can't heal Phantom completely because I haven't healed myself. And I can't heal myself without facing what happened. And I can't face it without speaking it. And if I speak it, you'll know the truth. Ah, what truth? Monica wrote the final devastating line. That it was my fault. That I killed her. And the truth is unforgivable. Carl read the words, his face going pale. Then he did something Monica didn't expect. He pulled her against his chest and held on like she was the only solid thing in a world that wouldn't stop burning. The final demonstration drew half the county. Aristocrats lined the paddock fence, watching Monica lead Phantom through his paces. The stallion moved with liquid grace, responsive to her slightest gesture. Victory felt close enough to taste. Then someone lit the torch. Later, they'd find evidence. Oil-soaked rags hidden in the hay. Thomas's boot prints leading away from the stable. But in the moment, there was only smoke and Phantom's scream and the world shattering into chaos. The stallion bolted. His shoulder caught a fence post, splintering wood. People scattered, shrieking. Phantom reared, hooves slashing, his eyes rolling white with terror. He was back in the fire, back in the moment William died, and nothing Monica had built could reach him. Carl ran forward. Phantom's hoof caught his temple, sent him sprawling. Blood bloomed dark against his pale skin. "Shoot it!" someone shouted. "Before it kills someone!" A groom raised a rifle. The barrel tracked Phantom's wild movements, searching for a clean shot. Monica moved without thought, placing herself between the gun and the horse. Her hands came up in a gesture that meant stop in every language. But it wasn't enough. The groom's finger tightened on the trigger. And Monica spoke. "Phantom." The word tore from her throat, rusty and broken, and absolutely hers. "Phantom, please." The horse froze. Every person in the courtyard went silent. Monica's voice shook, each word costing more than the last. I know you're drowning. I know you think," her breath caught. "I know you think it's your fault William died. That you should have saved him. That you deserve to burn too." Phantom's ears swiveled toward her. "But it wasn't your fault." Tears streamed down Monica's face. "Just like it wasn't my fault when I was driving and the wheel broke and my mother—" Her voice cracked. Her last words were, "I forgive you, sweetheart. It wasn't your fault." And I couldn't believe her. So I stopped speaking. I stopped everything. I built a cage from guilt and called it penance. She took a step toward Phantom, then another. But she forgave me, and I have to forgive myself. And you have to forgive yourself, too. William wouldn't want this. He'd want you to live. Phantom lowered his head and pressed his nose against her shaking hands. Behind her, Carl was crying. The physician bandaged Carl's head while Monica stood with Phantom, her voice already fading back to whispers. Speaking cost more than she'd remembered. But Carl was alive. Phantom was alive. The truth was finally free. Carl found her in the stable an hour later. Blood still stained his temple, but his eyes were clear and determined. "Marry me." Monica's voice came out barely audible. "Carl, the scandal." "I don't care." He took her hands. "You found your voice to save us. Let me use mine to claim you. Publicly. Loudly. In front of everyone who thinks you're unsuitable." The Dowager Duchess appeared in the doorway, her expression unreadable. Then she did something that shocked them both. She smiled. "My son is right. You're extraordinary, Miss Jefferson. And if society objects, let them. The Duntons have weathered worse." Thomas was escorted from the estate that evening, his sabotage exposed. Monica watched him go without speaking, saving her fragile voice for things that mattered. They married 3 weeks later. Monica spoke her vows in a whisper, but she spoke them. Some days words came easily. Others, she chose the comfort of silence. But now it was choice, not prison. Learning to communicate with speech again proved harder than either expected. Sometimes Carl spoke over her, forgetting to wait. Sometimes Monica retreated into quietness rather than pushing through the discomfort of articulation. But they learned, slowly, together. A year later, Monica stood in the therapeutic stable she'd built on the estate grounds, her hand resting on her swollen belly. 6 women worked alongside her, all dismissed by society for various defects, all finding purpose with damaged horses who needed patient hands. Carl rode past on Phantom, heading toward William's grave. The stallion moved with gentle confidence, finally at peace with his grief. Carl had learned to remember his son with joy instead of just pain. That evening, Monica held her newborn daughter against her chest, her voice steady and sure. "Let me tell you a story," she whispered, "about a killer horse who taught your mother that being broken is not the same as being beyond repair. That sometimes the bravest thing we can do is speak our truth, even when it terrifies us. Well, that healing isn't about forgetting. It's about learning to carry what we've lost without letting it destroy us." Outside, Phantom's quiet whinny drifted through the window, and Monica smiled.